Now that we've seen how links work and what adding href and titles do to them, let's look at how we could link to other things online. So although we're still working with absolute links, you're going to see that really anything that's online is fair game for linking to. Now, in our first example, we linked to a web page at Wikipedia. So that was pretty straightforward. We just took the URL, copied it, and pasted it. So now let's go back to that Wikipedia entry for the World Wide Web article. And let's look at the next link that it had. It had computers. So it wants to link to computers. Okay, well, we know that first we'll start in our text. Here's computers. We're going to start with the anchor tag, right? And just to give it something, href equals, we'll put the two quotes, and we could start with the good old pound sign just to know that we've properly, let's see, that we've properly linked our document. Okay, here's computers, right. So it's not going anywhere. But now instead of finding the link to computers over here, which is just another Wikipedia page, let's Google computers and see if we could find an image. I'm going to go right here to images, and now here's a bunch of images that Google pulls up of computers. So let's see. If I click on this image, now this is pretty cool, good old Apple II, but what I want to do is I can't actually link to this image because there's nothing here to link. This is actually a JavaScript thing that's putting this window up like this. So I'm going to click on right here where it says, well, actually before I do that, I know that I can't link to this because if I look at my URL, well, it's a big long something, and I could copy this and paste it somewhere else, and it gives me this. Well, I guess I can link to this page like this, but what I want to link to is the actual image. So if I click here on full size, now you see how the link here ends with .jpeg. This is pretty, if you're a designer, that is an image file. You're familiar with that. So, well, here's what I could do. I could copy that text or that URL, and I'm going to go back to my href tag, and I'm going to remove that pound and paste that in. So now let me make sure it's formatted correctly. Okay, I have the HTTP. I need that because that stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. That means how it's going to go get the information through the web. And here's the URL it's going to, but now we're not going to an HTML page, we're going to an image. So let's see what happens there. Here we go. I'll refresh my page. So when I click on computer here, bam, it takes me to the image page, which is online. Alright, pretty cool. Well, let's do another URL. This time, let's look at using some Google results. So every time someone clicks on the page, we'll give them fresh results from Google. The next term that they have listed is internet. So I'm just going to take internet, I'm going to copy that term, I'm going to go to Google, and I'm going to paste it in there. Internet. There we go. Okay, here's all my stuff. Now, just as easy as taking this URL up here, I'm going to copy it, and then let's go see where the internet is. So here's internet in my code. I'll start with A, and then I'll end A, add the href equals quotes quotes, pump that in there. Wow, that is a heck of a URL over there, but let's see the result. Okay, I'm gonna click it. Alright, it gives me Google results. So what's cool with a link like that is that those are live Google links or fresh, not Google link, fresh Google results every time the user clicks it. if I create it today and then a user goes and checks it out 5 years from now, they're going to get, 5 years in the future from now, that search result for Google for internet. And I might as well show you a cool little trick. Sometimes when you see a big old URL like this, it's really messy. Maybe you want to copy and paste it into an email or present it on a web page, and it's just really ugly. I mean, there's the best way to describe it. It's huge. It's got a whole bunch of code over here. Well, forget that. Let me show you a cool trick to get this to look a little bit nicer. I'm going to cut this out of my document and put the pound mark in there. Now, I cut it out of my document. I didn't delete it. And I am going to go to a service called, if you Google it, tinyurl. So Google that, and you should find a place called tinyurl.com. And they offer a completely free service where here you could put in the big long URL. Oh, there you go. Here's the cost of doing business advertisement. I'm going to paste that in there. And now I have two options. I could either just make the URL, or I could define something else down here that says custom alias optional. Well, let me just show you real quick. Just the most basic way to do it. You click make tiny URL, and look what it gives you. It gives you a tiny URL right here that you could copy, and if you bring that into a browser and paste it, it actually translates it to that big ugly URL that we had before. So now let me go back and just show you exactly what you could do with this custom option. I'm going to take this and paste that. Well, I don't want to paste that other URL. Let me paste a big ugly Google URL, and I'll paste it in here so it's big and ugly. Now, instead of it just giving us a number back over there, why don't we put Google search internet, and I'll click enter, and let's see, and look what it does. So now I have, now this is what you would call a pretty URL, and nowadays on the web everybody likes to have URLs that in and of themselves are pretty descriptive. So you could copy that, and let's just make sure it works. Paste it in there. Okay, it does. You guys probably didn't see anything happen, just because it's pulling the same page. So I could put that in there, and there you go. And you know what, just for fun, I'll show you another silly service that someone showed me. Has one of your friends ever emailed you about a silly question like, where can I buy shoes online? And you're thinking, well, why didn't you just Google it? Well, there's a service called Let Me Google That For You, and it's pretty funny. So here's the good old Google. Almost looks just like Google, but it says let me Google that for you. So let me put in my search term. Actually, no, let me make it relevant to the content that we have. What's the next term that Wikipedia has? Email. So I'm going to go to email. I'm going to do the good old anchor /anchor href equals the quotes, and then in let me Google that for you, I'm going to type in what is email, and now you see it creates this link over here. Actually, and look at that, it also has tiny URL, but we'll just copy the link as it is, and let me show you what happens. I'm going to put the link in here. And now look at the screen over here. You ready? It says step 1, type in your question. And it automates it. And then step 2, click search. Was that so hard? So with that said, I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to save it. So now when somebody goes to my site or my page, oops, he says email does. Let me fix that by moving that here. and refresh it. Okay, so I'm going to click on my email link and let's see what happens. Let me Google that for you. And now people know what an obnoxious nerd I truly am. So those are a couple of different ways that you can link to URLs outside, all still within the realm of absolute links, but you just see that pretty much anything that's online is fair game for you to link to.